and it's a pretty broad topic, but we're gonna really simplify it here in 15 minutes to get you started on your journey to accreditation. I'm going to share my screen. So I call it From Surviving to Thriving, and I want to start with a short story. And the story goes like this. My first year as a principal in a K-12 school, I was also finishing my master's degree. So there was a lot of new going on, and the school was up for accreditation. The classic, right? New principal and accreditation. By the end of that year, we were all done, finished the master's degree, and we were accredited, but it was a difficult journey for me because of one reason. And that reason was that I didn't read enough. And my next slide is going to kind of explain what I mean about that. What do you mean you didn't read enough? Well, let's go ahead and start the slideshow. It's on your screen now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I call it steps for success. And number one is the number one thing that I should have done. And you know, when that year was finished, you learn a lot. And you say, wow, I'll never make that mistake again. If I'm ever a new principal at a school with accreditation coming, well, you know, that'll only happen once in your lifetime, but you will run into other accreditations. So the first thing is, man, day one of landing at the school, maybe day two, find the last self-study document, and I put it right there, read it. Sometimes we put these things off and we have an idea in our head what we need to do. And I've found that in the evaluation process, there's just some documents that you need to get in and you need to read them. There's just no substitute for doing that. And so at the end of this, the last couple of minutes, I am going to close the PowerPoint and I'm going to go show you samples of these documents that I'm referring to. So don't worry about, well, what does a self-study look like? We're going to look at one. The next step is find the action plans and read them. And you might say, well, what are the action plans? Well, when the school completed their self-study, one of the documents that is an addition to the self-study are the action plans. The action plans really are the essence of what the school at that cycle, at the time that they did that, said, these are the things that we think are really important to do. And oftentimes it's ironic that these action plans kind of get lost. They sit on a shelf somewhere and nobody knows where they are. And yet they put hours and hours of discussion and planning into these action plans. And so find the action plans and once again, read them. And number two, I would say you do these just side by side. Find the last visiting committee report, okay? So the school would have, and what I'm assuming for this audience is that you're a new principal and you're going through a future evaluation accreditation process in the very near future, right? So this is your first time. And you're really not familiar with all of the documents. So I'm kind of mapping them out here. So I would find the last study, lay it on the left side, and I would find the last visiting committee report and lay it beside it. And I would read them basically together. Read the self-study first, because that's what the school did first. And then the visiting committee came and studied the self-study, and then they authenticated it. And they decided that, yes, this self-study was well done. We agree with most of these things. And in addition, they add a set of recommendations. And you'll see all of that in the visiting committee report. And so those documents need to be read kind of side by side. It's so important that you read the two of them together. And obviously, these would be in the same year. So the self-study document would be in the same year as the visiting committee report. Those should have the same approximate date on them, at least the same year, so that they are referring to each other. Okay. And this one here, this is the one that when I was a new principal, this is the document that I wish I would have read, like the moment I sat down to start preparing for accreditation. And the NAD has produced a very good accreditation manual. And the original one was about 120 pages. The thing is, it doesn't take that long to read. It might take an hour and a half, maybe at the most 2 hours to really read it because there's a lot of white space in it. And so that accreditation manual just overviews the entire process and helps you understand where you are at any given time in the process, what your responsibilities are, et cetera. It is a wonderful manual. And if there were no other document that you read, this would be the one to be most familiar with, because then you'll have a complete picture of what it is you need to be doing, what came before, what's coming after, and what you need to do this year. So as you can see, there's a lot of reading. And we're educators, we're supposed to be good at reading. So read the documents. And then you would look for the latest continuous school improvement plan. Now, I'll add here that you may not have one. Okay, and especially a lot of our small schools, they haven't built one. If you can't find a continuous school improvement plan, then at least use the action plans and the recommendations from the visiting committee report to kind of build your own continuous school improvement plan. And when I say your own, I don't mean your own, I mean for the school. Because those action plans and those recommendations are really the things you need to be working on from one visiting committee cycle to the next 6 years later. This continuous school improvement plan is the name that we use in education. In the business world, we call it a strategic plan. And there's really not probably a business, in the world, at least a sizable business, that doesn't have a strategic plan. They've sat down and they've said, hey, in the next 3 to 5 years, what are the most important things that we need to accomplish? And they capture those into a document. They share it with the stakeholders. And it really is kind of a roadmap for what we need to be doing over the next handful of years as a school. I would also call it a living document. You want to be able to tweak it and change it, improve it. Remember, things change so fast. The only constant that we have is change. And so this document should be flexible and ready to be edited and changed as needed. So if you do find one, this is fantastic. That means that your school is living up to the full kind of expectation of the accrediting cycle that they're in. In fact, I would argue that the CSIP, the Continuous School Improvement Plan, is the most important document now asked for at any accreditation. If you don't have a continuous school improvement plan, you're not going to get the highest accreditation rating. It's just not going to happen. And you're almost guaranteed another visit very soon, oftentimes just 1 year later, to ensure that you have your continuous school improvement plan. So we are really coaching and stressing to our schools to get these improvement plans completed. I could do a 1-hour seminar just on how to do a continuous school improvement plan, but we don't have time for that. Then after you really have a good grip on all of these documents and what was laid out for the school in these various documents, then you want to go to your school board on a multi-year basis and train your school board and show them these documents and show them how we need to be moving forward on these documents. And when I say train your school board, some of your school board members may know about the evaluation process and some of them may not. And so it's important to train the whole school board on what these documents are and what the school has to do over the next year or 2 or 6. It depends on where you are in the accreditation cycle. And then after you train your school board, and I'm pretending right now that you're 2 years out from your next accreditation, right? You've trained your school board, you understand all of these documents, and now let's say you're 18 months out you need to build your subcommittees of your school board. And your subcommittees will work on building the self-study for the next cycle. So there's a software called Accreditation that you will put your subcommittees in, and they'll be able to work in there, and they'll be able to essentially evaluate the school yourselves. So the school itself, school board, teachers, principal, stakeholders form these subcommittees, and they actually complete this process of self-study by rating the school in 9 different standards. We'll look at those in a minute. So those little subcommittees of the board are built, and they start working 18 months to a year to 2 years before your next visit from a visiting committee. So those are your little subcommittees. Then you write your self-study and the action plans. So after you build your subcommittees and they understand what they need to be doing, they actually complete their portion of the document. And because this is all online, each subcommittee is able to work inside that document and write their self-study portion of the document while other teams are in there doing that too. Now, in very small schools with small boards, you might only have 2 or 3 subcommittees of the board. And I would encourage you, if your board is very small, use some church members. Use people that aren't necessarily part of your board to fill out these committees, especially the different standards have different expertise needed, right? And I would strongly encourage you to have a teacher on each subcommittee, because the subcommittees can get really stuck when they have teacher-related questions without any teacher there to answer those. And if you're the only teacher in the school, it just means that you're going to be on several subcommittees, and that can be a little challenging for your time. And then number 8, work on your CSIP every year. So let's assume that you found a continuous school improvement plan, and you're somewhere in that 6-year cycle. The continuous school improvement plan should be a document that is worked on every year. And I would say multiple times a year. I brought the CSIP to our school board 4 times in a school year, just to update them on our progress. And sometimes it's board members that should be working on that CSIP, right? They've said, hey, I'll redesign the playground. And, 4 months later, nobody's done anything about the playground, even though they said, hey, I'll take care of it. So it's very important to update the school board 3 to 4 times a year on, hey, here's the progress we're making on our CSIP. And so that this is just a continuous process. You don't want to wait the year before you're going to get accredited to suddenly start looking at all these documents and start doing all the things you said you were going to do. That doesn't fulfill the word continuous, because a continuous school improvement plan is exactly that. It's continuous, and it's happening, month in, month out, year in and year out. So that's the end of my slide, but what I want to do now is show you how quickly and easily you can find some of these documents. So here's our Adventist Education website, and it has changed recently, and I've been getting familiar with the site. Things are just in a little different place, but so starting right here on the website, you go to the NAD Educators Corner, and then you start looking across the top here at the various choices you have, and it becomes pretty evident where you would need to go next. It's logical to go to educators, and then you get this drop-down list of all of these different places that you can go. Resources for administrators, that's where these documents used to be kept. They're not there anymore. But if you go over to handbooks and manuals and you scroll down, you'll see the very last choice here, Accreditation Visiting Committee Handbook. And that's really a handbook that focuses on the visiting committee. But when you read through that document, it has a tremendous amount of information on the accreditation process and will help you be ready as a principal. So highly recommend you would download that, maybe print it off, put it in a binder, and put it by your bedstand and read it late into the night, help keep you awake. So that's where you find that. Here's what it looks like. I'm quite a ways into the document. I'm on page 36 or so. Let me just scroll down. Yeah, I'm on page 35, and I just jumped into the middle of the document here to show you a continuous school improvement plan is right here, and it's giving you a sample of how to write those, what it should look like. You don't have to think all this up. It's been provided for you. And as we scroll down here, you can see just more of those samples. A very helpful document. I want to show you what a visiting committee document would look like. So let's say that you've arrived at your school and you're thinking, well, what am I looking for? The report of the visiting team to, and this happens to be Pine Mountain Christian School. This was done just a few years ago. This is what it would look like. All of them have this cover page like this. And then as you scroll down, you're going to see, who chaired that committee and then the different team members on it. This is helpful information because if you have a question about the document, oftentimes you might even know some of these people. Be in your own conference and you can reach out and say, hey, what did you guys mean by this particular recommendation? And then I'm going to scroll pretty fast here. I don't want you to get nauseated by looking at this, but I'm going to scroll almost to the very end of the document and show you that at the end of the document is a summary list of recommendations. And it's a great place to go to just see, okay, these are all the recommendations that were written for a particular school, and these need to be done. And so that is the end of my presentation. My little timer has started ringing and indicated that it's the end, but I hope this has been helpful. Again, just a reminder, there's a lot of documents for you to read. And when you do that, you will find yourself in a much better place.